So the very first assessment that you will need to conduct is in actual fact an RPL assessment. RPL can be quite daunting and normally is conducted by very experienced assessors. The reason being is that it's very open-ended, right? Because you will have people coming from all walks of life, all sorts of industries, and all sorts of experiences as well. And you just don't know what kind of documentation that they're going to give you. And that is the reason why you should be very, very familiar with the RPL assessment process. Now, we have provided one in the assessment task workbook, and it starts off with an initial interview. You should provide them with the RPL candidate guide, because one thing we know is you are an awesome and compliant assessor, but the thing is your candidate would not know a thing about the units of competencies and assessment requirements and how to actually interpret them. Okay, so you need to assist your candidate in understanding what the requirements are, what the process is going to be, what evidence, do they have, what experience, and to really let them know it's not just going to be a third-party report and that is it. If you have ever tried to apply for RPL, you know it's not as simple as, I think the title of the unit tells me that I have all the required evidence and experience, and I'm just going to get my former employer to write me a third-party report just saying how great I am. You know it doesn't work that way. There needs to be documentary evidence. What does that mean? It's saying, hey, this is an RTO. We have processes in place. We need to make sure that you really are competent today, current, and not only that, but where is the evidence, right? We need the evidence, because if we don't have the evidence, we can get into a lot of trouble when someone asks, hey, how did you actually decide that John was competent for this unit of competency? Or obviously, how did you grant RPL for this particular candidate, John, here? And you don't need to be umming and ahhing, because if you have been trained by us, you know that documentary evidence is super duper important, and we need to file everything away, because then your competence will never be questioned. All right, so once you have that evidence, you might be thinking, well, somebody might be thinking, did John really complete this? And I have to say, with the internet, there is so much out there. And now with AI, we also am wondering and have to do a lot of work just to see, is this really John's work? Because if it isn't, then we could be violating a whole bunch of other things, such as authenticity as well. So you want to be sure that you get some third-party verification, someone who has worked with John, knows John, and can verify that, yes, this is his work, in fact. And then what happens is that the units and the assessment requirements and foundation skills and everything like that will, or should I say may have gaps. So sometimes just to make things a little bit easier for our candidate, what we can do is conduct a competency conversation. So the candidate needs to hear you ask the questions, ponder, think about it, and then they will answer. They're not reading from their answers that they have pre-prepared, because competency conversations, unlike a usual Q&A, it is really for the assessor to get a feel of the competence and the knowledge, and also to fill in any other gaps which the documentary evidence was not able to provide. So this is the perfect time really for both yourself to be confident as an assessor to say, yes, this person is competent, I'm going to grant RPL to them, or just to see if your candidate can explain further on some of the evidence. And then what you're going to do is provide an assessment judgment. I do not take this lightly, and neither should you. Sometimes it's going to be so difficult to say, sorry, John, but you're going to have to resubmit this because we love our students and we want to say, yes, you pass, bye, see ya. Hang on, that doesn't seem like you love them very much. But you want them to succeed. That's what I'm saying, not just to, like, you know, have them off and be gone and never see them again. That's not what I meant. But what I'm trying to say is that we want to see them to succeed, but sometimes they will have gaps. And sometimes some of the work might be just not to the standard of the unit. And that's okay. So, in which case, you need to make that judgment and then provide them with some gap training. That's all it is, because you want to send them on their merry way with everything that they need to know to effectively do their job, right? Not just 90% of it. It needs to be 100%. We're not asking for expert level. With any competency, it's not about being an expert. It's able to do the work competently and all of it, right? So all the tasks within the unit as well as all the knowledge within the unit, they need to know. And that's what competency conversations, sometimes we're unable to see it in the evidence that they provided to us, in which case what we would do is just talk about it, right? So once they've done the gap training, you may go, yes, no, like satisfactory, not satisfactory. And then it may come back to you, and then you do the assessment judgment again. And look, if they have all completed and they are competent and you've granted them RPL, which is recognition of prior learning, then you need to finalize things, right? You need to have this documentation somewhere stored in your RTO. It's super duper important that you do that, because if it's not documented, basically it didn't happen. And I know you have heard of that saying before. So please make sure you dot the I's and cross your T's, sign where you need to sign, date where you need to date. And sometimes people ask me, Kim, why do I have to sign for? Look, every LMS is going to be different. Sometimes you're not going to need to sign and there's going to be automatic signatures produced, etc. And other times you will need to electronically sign. Other times you might be physically signing. Every RTO does things differently. There's no right or wrong, but one thing I know for sure is you, as the assessor, need to put your name to it, because you are the one who is stating that this person is competent or not competent, or whether you've granted them RPL or not. So having your name on that, you are responsible for this candidate. Before